Hey, Sunday morning sexy time story here. And I'm going back in the vault for this one. This is back when I was not long out of college, I think. Still with my then boyfriend Jack, who's a filmmaker and still is. Lo these many years later. And he'd had his senior thesis film selected for a bunch of awards and stuff. And so one of the events took him to Paris for a screening of his film along with a bunch of other NYU film students' films. And so I went along, which was cool. And I think it was probably the closing night of the festival. And it was myself and Jack and the woman who was hosting the festival and a bunch of other film students had gone out to this really schmancy restaurant. You know, we were all starving students. Well, not all for the most part. There were a couple of those rich kids among us. Anyway, we gone out to this restaurant to right on the Champs-Elysees, you know, on the boulevard and everything. And we're having a splurge kind of night. And it was funny because there was this one guy who was in the group who I had a terrible, terrible crush on, of course, but, you know, I was completely on the down low about it because I'm there with my boyfriend and that's just rude. But he was very hot. And, of course, I wound up sitting next to him at the dinner, so I'm sitting there next to my boyfriend who, you know, is being his usual kind of obnoxious self. But, and I, of course, am just like, I'm just going to fucking ignore you because I'm near this really hot guy, and so I'm enjoying that. So we're eating dinner, and at one point, the cutie guy orders a tray of oysters, you know, and I had never been in such proximity to them because I felt that they were repulsive and not worth my time. So he's sitting there, you know, and there's this tray with the salt and ice and the mignonette dressing and the whole little forks. And I'm watching him, you know, do this whole preparation for the oyster, and he turns to me in all this, you know, generosity, going, "Well, you can have one if you want," you know. And I'm like, "No, thanks." And immediately, you know how it is when you love something, and someone has rejected it. You know, all you want to do is to make them love it too. And he became determined to get me to eat an oyster. And at first, he eats a couple, and then he's like, "God, they're really good. You know, have you ever tried them? You know, you should really try something before you give it a miss." And I said, "You know, I don't need to try a cold ball of snot before I realize I don't want it. Thank you." And then he became more and more insistent, like kind of, you know, pushy about it. You know, like, "Well, you really need to understand and develop your palate so that you can accept," like all these tactics, you know, like making me feel like I was missing something great, and then making me feel like I wasn't sophisticated if I didn't eat it. And I was just like, whatever. Finally, I just got really frustrated. I turned on my, like, I'm not going to eat it. I don't want to. Thank you. And so he turns away and then turns back to me, and he's got this perfectly shelled oyster, you know, like with a little couple of little cubes of the shallot on top, and it drizzled the mignonette on. And he leans over and grabs my face like this. And I'm so shocked that, like, my mouth just falls open. I'm looking at him. And he leans in really close and goes, "I really want you to eat this oyster." And I'm sitting there like, okay. And so still holding, you know, my jaw in his hand, he leans in with the other hand and, like, pours the oyster into my mouth and then, like, closes it. And, like, holds my mouth shut, and he goes, "Now chew it." And I'm like, and then he's looking at me, like, really intensely. He goes, "How was it?" And I remember thinking, how was what? Because because something had really sort of shocked me about this whole interaction. And so by the time I was done eating it, I was like, it was really good. He's like, "You want another one?" I'm like, "Yeah." So he feeds me this other oyster, and I'm like completely turned on. It's like insane. And my boyfriend's sitting right there like, "Ah, I can't believe you gotta eat oysters. She never fucking..." And I'm like, "Shh." But what's funny about it is that, of course, in retrospect, you know, fewer things are more powerful to me than someone telling me they want me to do something. Someone who pleasing holds an interest for me, especially then. And who knows? So thank you, unknown guy. I don't even remember what the dude's name was really, for fostering an appreciation for oysters, and for one brief moment of zen when it came to my eventual future. So goodbye, and have a happy Sunday.